Bill Goldberg is a name that we haven't heard from a lot lately in the wrestling world. I think the last time Goldberg was in the news were rumors that maybe he was talking with Tony Khan in an effort to try to make a move to AEW, perhaps. This was right around the time of the big Wembley London show, and perhaps he was trying to make a move to get on that show, but that never came to fruition. But Goldberg did admit during this interview, he was on the Steve Trevino. He's a comedian. He has a podcast by the name of Steve and Captain Evil. It's not a podcast that I am familiar with, but he was doing a live holiday special, and Bill Goldberg happened to be one of the guests on the show. And, of course, Goldberg did get into something pretty controversial. But before he got into that, he had this to say about Sting, something that I wasn't familiar with. Apparently, Sting is the reason that Goldberg got into the business. And Goldberg mentioned wanting to be involved with Sting's last match in AEW. Check out this clip.
Sting's the reason why I broke into the business. Sting set a great example. And he's about to retire in February. And I tried to be a part of his retirement match, you know. But I wouldn't have chose to get in the world of professional wrestling if it wasn't for Sting. He was don't take offense to this. He was a normal dude who went out and did abnormal things, right? Wrestling is like being in the circus. I mean, it truly is. So I never looked at it with much respect. But after I watched him from afar, I realized that I had the ability to go do it.
That's cool that Goldberg said that about Sting. I hadn't had any idea that Sting had that big of a role in Goldberg's career, that it was, him meeting Sting that kind of told him that this was a career path that he could feel comfortable pursuing. But it's good to know there. And look, no news on Goldberg coming to AEW for that last match with Sting. I would imagine that comes with a pretty hefty price tag too. But yeah, Sting has not retired yet, so it remains to be seen. But it was for another comment that Goldberg made that kind of made this here podcast interview that he had newsworthy in the wrestling world. There was a fan in the crowd when they were taking live questions that asked him his thoughts on Vince McMahon. And Goldberg seemed a little bit surly. Check out this clip.
Now, segue into Vince. Vince, in all honesty, he gave me the opportunity to put my wife and my son on the front row and gave me the ability to perform again in front of him. So I owe him everything. Until we went to Saudi Arabia and he asked me to put Roman Reigns over, and I had COVID. And I remember calling him from my house here, and I said, listen, here's the deal. I'll do it if you give me a retirement match. So I put myself in a horribly shitty situation to get what I wanted to, but to satiate him and to give him what he wanted. Problem is, he never held up his bargain. So Vince is a piece of shit as far as I'm concerned.
You heard it here live, ladies and gentlemen.
So we can all agree that Vince McMahon's pretty much a scumbag. And if this was a promise that he had made to Goldberg, it doesn't surprise me. Though Vince has always been pretty good about keeping his promises. But to hear all that anger out of Goldberg, like he seems kind of pissy with Vince. I don't know if there was a payday involved, obviously, that he was hoping to get out of that. But, I think every wrestler deserves to have a proper retirement match as well. Some don't get that. Sometimes people get hurt and that's it. Big E had no idea that the last match he had was going to be his last match. Some people don't have that opportunity, but if you're able to get it, I can see why wrestlers would want to have that one last moment to shine. And that might be why Goldberg was trying to speak with AEW. But if you want my honest opinion here, I think Goldberg is kind of a douchebag. I'd kind of turned around on him a few years ago when he had started kind of really putting over the wrestling business and talking about how much it meant to him now that it's all kind of over with. But he spent a lot of his time on this particular, I listened to the whole show, and he spent a lot of time on this particular podcast trying to be the cool guy that did that fake wrestling bullshit in his underwear. That's all that stupid crap or whatever. And he kind of takes his little jabs at it. He'll do things like, I was over in the corner pretending to be hurt. He says he said he got a way bigger rush from football. He said that he didn't respect wrestling for the longest time. And he was just generally kind of condescending towards wrestling in general. Now, he did give it its props here and there, but even with the Hall of Fame, he mentioned in the Hall of Fame, and everybody's like, well, hey, hold on now. That's quite a big achievement. He's like, come on, guys. It's a fake sport. Who cares? So it's like that kind of stuff to me is rather douchey. Like Goldberg is this guy who in his mind is a football player who never made it as a football player. And he was never going to make it as a football player. He wasn't going to be a big breakout star. He was good enough to be in the NFL, but he wasn't going to be like a Hall of Famer there. So he settled for the only other thing that he could actually make money in and be a star and all that, because he talks about he wanted to make a difference for kids, be a role model, that kind of thing. So the next best option was to be a pro wrestler. But the thing is that Goldberg has always his entire life disdained pro wrestling. He's always thought it was fake, stupid bullshit. He always thinks he can beat everybody's ass. That's another thing he said. Somebody, he mentioned Bobby Lashley, he's like, well, somebody in the crowd says he's as big as Goldberg, and Goldberg's like, yeah, well, I'm a lot older now. If I was younger, I would have kicked his ass too. And he winked about it, but it's like, he's so, and like, he didn't need to be, because everybody on this panel was like, whoa, it's Goldberg. You know what I mean? This huge wrestling star. Like they would act around Hulk Hogan or John Cena or Stone Cold if he was on the show. Like people respect the iconic, legendary pro wrestlers. But the whole time he was on there almost apologizing for being a goddamn wrestler and apologizing for being part of some fake, phony, stupid bullshit in his underwear. And really just kind of, he was trying to be the cool kid by not taking it seriously when all he had to do was just be Bill Goldberg, because people were in awe of what they were seeing out of Goldberg. It pisses me off, quite frankly. A guy that has achieved that much, that's reached those levels of the business, to be a Hall of Famer, to have earned all that money, to be that big of a star, to have touched as many kids in an appropriate way as he did in his life. To just go, that fake phony bullshit. I'm really a football player at heart, but I got hurt the old knee, and I couldn't do it anymore, so I had to settle for the fake shit. Man, it breaks my heart that he's still talking like that. And that, it seems like it depends who he's talking to. If he's talking to a wrestling mark, sure, he loves the sport and blah, 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 blah. But when he's talking to comedians and musicians and whoever else was on this show and whoever else was in the crowd, it was very clear that Goldberg was trying to distance himself from being that wrestler guy. Like, it's just a thing that he did, that he enjoyed and made a lot of money from, and he doesn't regret doing it, but at the same time, he's kind of embarrassed by it seems. But that was my take. That's what I got from it. And as far as him saying fuck Vince McMahon, look, man, he wouldn't be the first person. He wouldn't be the first person to have a beef or get bitter with Vince over some business dealings or whatever. Goldberg should have his last match. Every wrestler deserves it, and he is. Despite what I feel about him or you or anybody else, he's an icon. He's a legend, and his final match would do a lot of big money. And maybe that does happen in AEW. Maybe that happens over in Wembley next year. Who knows what will happen with Goldberg, Tony Khan. Maybe he pops back up in the WWE anything's possible, obviously, in pro wrestling, but that's the scoop. That's what's going on with this interview. That's what Goldberg said, and that's my take on it. I'd love to know your take. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I did link the whole interview down in the comment description, but I don't know that you'll be all that interested to hear it because it's just Goldberg shitting on wrestling and a not funny comedian and a country music singer of some kind. So if that's your jam, enjoy it. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next.
Let me tell you something, brother. You can check out full episodes each and every Sunday right here on this channel, dude. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to take your vitamins and say your prayers, brother.